For 180 kilometers south of Iceland at 0214 hours, a lethal acoustic signature that hadn't echoed through the Atlantic since Cold War days suddenly shattered the oceanic silence. Its active sonar blazing to life, a Russian Tula-class submarine locked its torpedo directors onto a U.S. vessel with killing intent. The Russian captain was convinced he possessed the upper hand, completely unaware that fingers were already hovering over a trigger on a U.S. Navy destroyer peering through the darkness. A trigger that would reshape naval supremacy within 90 seconds. On a billion-dollar submarine, Moscow was placing a bet on a bluff that Washington stood fully prepared to answer. The shadow game that followed would send the Kremlin's elite into a state of shock. To grasp why the genuine power of the United States transcends mere news headlines, you must watch this video through to its conclusion. It represents a calculated, relentless process of technological dominance that permits zero margin for Russian mistakes. Weeks before this confrontation, the standoff had its genesis when the Belawan, a vessel the U.S. Department of State had previously flagged for transporting Iranian oil to finance regional instability, made an attempt to exploit a Caribbean legal loophole. For U.S. Navy and Coast Guard personnel, the stakes extend far beyond a single ship. At issue is the global financial system's integrity and the $3.4 trillion in commerce that depends on these waters being ruled by international law rather than shadowy operations. In an unprecedented move of pure desperation, the Kremlin retroactively registered the stateless vessel as Russian sovereign property mid-seizure. A legal Hail Mary intended to trap U.S. commanders in an impossible dilemma. Their aging shadow fleet of over 1,000 tankers, critical for fueling both their faltering economy and war machine, demanded protection. The choice: permit the illegal oil shipment to complete its journey or risk direct kinetic engagement with a nuclear-armed adversary. For veterans watching, this scenario carries the scent of 1980s high-stakes cat and mouse encounters, now layered with contemporary electronic warfare and legal manipulation. If you believe the U.S. should adopt a more aggressive stance against these pirate tankers, signal your support with the like button and share in the comments which vessel we should monitor next. Global attention is focused here, and you could slice through the tension with a combat knife. Despite Russian intimidation, the U.S. Coast Guard pressed forward undeterred. Moscow's playbook here proves as corroded and unreliable as the very tankers they're attempting to shield. Deploying both submarines and surface combatants to escort civilian vessels represents their effort to project the image of a blue water navy capable of defending its interests globally. American eyes see through to a far more fragile reality. The Russian Northern Fleet operates on depleted budgets and borrowed time, wielding intimidation to mask the fact that their economy suffers strangulation from the very sanctions these tankers attempt to circumvent. Their motivation reduces to simple survival. Each oil barrel reaching port buys another day to finance their aggression. They calculate that escalating threats by introducing submarine assets will force U.S. withdrawal to prevent a Third World War scenario. Western hesitation becomes their gamble, using the Marinera as a 600-foot shield constructed of steel and petroleum. State-run media RT has even broadcast manipulated footage of the pursuit, attempting to portray the U.S. Coast Guard as aggressors against a peaceful civilian vessel, a narrative that crumbles upon examination of the vessel's darkened AIS and falsified documentation. They probe for weaknesses in the NATO perimeter, blind to the fact they're sailing straight into a technological ambush. The theater's technical disparity is staggering, beginning with the Arleigh Burke-class destroyer USS Oster-Austin, a 9,300-ton engineering masterpiece equipped with the Aegis combat system. The Russian Tula-class submarine depends on stealth for survival, but the Oster-Austin's N/Spy 1D phased array radar and N/SQS-89V 15 undersea warfare suite transformed the ocean into transparent glass. The destroyer's arsenal includes the Mark 54 lightweight torpedo, engineered specifically for countering shallow water diesel submarines like the Tilo, plus the RUM-139 vertical launch ASROC, capable of delivering lethal payloads to submarine positions in under 90 seconds from miles distant. Above the surface, a P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft, the most sophisticated submarine hunter ever constructed, deployed a pattern of 32 sonobuoys, leaving a digital net impossible for the Russian captain to evade. The P-8A's Raytheon APY-10 radar possesses such sensitivity it can detect submarine snorkels from miles away, even through heavy seas. While Russians employ 20th century tactics, the U.S. Navy operates within a multi-domain environment where every sensor from seabed to satellite links into a single, flawless kill chain. Though quiet, the Kilo's propulsion generates a distinctive acoustic signature the U.S. Navy has cataloged for decades. We possess knowledge of their pump sounds, screw frequencies, and even the nervous rhythm of their crew's heartbeats. This doesn't constitute a fair engagement. It's a scientific demonstration of naval supremacy. The climax arrived at 0345 hours with the Russian submarine's final, desperate error. It initiated a rapid ascent designed to surface and intimidate the U.S. Coast Guard vessel. But the Oscar Austin had already positioned itself in anticipation, predicting the maneuver before Russian ballast tanks even began to blow. As the 4,000-ton Kilo breached the surface like a black cetacean, it confronted the barrel of a 5-inch Mark 45 naval gun and 2 Phalanx CIWS systems already tracking and locked onto its sail. The U.S. commander maintained his course with iron discipline, refusing to maneuver away, holding steady at 18 knots less than 500 yards from the Marinera's corroded hull and the submarine's dripping black metal. Within the Combat Information Center, professional calm prevailed. A sharp contrast to frantic Russian radio demands that the U.S. halt its illegal pursuit. The Americans required no gunfire. They simply proved ownership of every environmental element. When a second U.S. destroyer, the USS Donald Cook, materialized on the horizon, Russian surface units recognized the mathematics had shifted against them. The Kilo found itself trapped at the surface, stealth eliminated, tactical advantage evaporated by a superior networked opponent's sheer presence. The Russian captain understood mission failure the instant his periscope captured the American flag snapping in Atlantic winds. This encounter's aftermath presented the Kremlin with a humiliating decision and tarnished reputation. Their state media could frame it as successful civilian ship defense, but the naval community perceived the truth: a Russian submarine forced to surface and be photographed by the very vessels it was meant to intimidate. The Marinera, despite its new designation and flag, remains a marked target, its position tracked by NATO around the clock as it limps toward the North Sea. These Shadow Fleet tankers represent an environmental catastrophe waiting to detonate. Many exceed 15 years of age with inadequate insurance, but the U.S. has transmitted a crystal-clear message. Legal status cannot be manufactured on demand to sidestep international law. 2 previously seized tankers, the Skipper and the Centuries, prove the U.S. blockade maintains its integrity. The Russian escalation attempt has only triggered deployment of additional U.S. assets to the region, including F-35s now based in Northern Europe, establishing an impenetrable air superiority umbrella. Moscow's failed escort mission carries a multi-million-dollar price tag, but the loss of credibility among their allies proves immeasurable. They revealed their hand, and the U.S. Navy displayed a royal flush. This high seas drama delivers a profound lesson and warning to all Western adversaries in the contemporary age. Information velocity combined with professional crew discipline proves more deadly than any individual weapons system. Moscow absorbed an expensive lesson today regarding the absolute boundaries of reckless aggression. They attempted deploying a corroded tanker as a geopolitical pawn, but overlooked that the U.S. Navy has dedicated 75 years to perfecting the craft of maintaining open sea lanes and enforcing maritime rules. Today's instruction is straightforward. Never initiate a technological conflict with an opponent who has already established the game's parameters and mastered the trade's instruments. Precision masters the seas, not those concealed behind false flag shadows. Observing the Marinera's empty deck and a defeated submarine's retreating wake reminds us that freedom's price is perpetual vigilance and the steel-cold determination of those standing watch. What's your perspective? Should the U.S. Navy commence immediate boarding of these shadow tankers, or maintain pressure through this digital blockade? Sound off below, and we'll reconvene for the next analysis. As dawn broke and the North Atlantic's gray mist lifted, the situation's visual reality became starker still. With its flaking taint and black smoke pouring from antiquated engines, the Marinera resembled a bygone era's relic compared to the USS Oscar Austin's sleek, angular profile. The American crew, many descended from those who fought these same waters during World War II, operated with quiet efficiency born from thousands of training hours. They transcend mere sailors, embodying a nation's physical will. When the Russian kilo finally resubmerged, it descended under surveillance from an Oscar Austin CIC sonar operator who could virtually hear Russian sailors breathing. Every maneuver, rotation, and depth adjustment was documented and transmitted to Norfolk and the Pentagon in real time. Russian Maskirovka, their deception attempt, failed because in our 21st century, no deep ocean secrets exist for those wielding appropriate technology. This incident also illuminates expanding U.S. cooperation with North Atlantic partners. While the Oscar Austin-led operations, British Merlin helicopters and French frigates formed part of the wider regional net. This represents the Kremlin's deepest fear, not solely American strength, but unified alliance power sharing data, tactics, and common objectives. The Shadow Fleet constitutes more than a Russian concern. It threatens global maritime safety and economic stability. These deteriorating tankers, frequently operating without adequate insurance or maintenance, represent disasters awaiting any coastline they traverse. Intercepting the Marinara means the U.S. Navy isn't merely enforcing sanctions. It's safeguarding the environment and millions of livelihoods dependent on clean oceans. American commanders' professional restraint, even confronting a surface submarine at point-blank range, testifies to the U.S. military's moral high ground. They don't pursue conflict, but stand thoroughly prepared to conclude it. Looking forward, the Kremlin's desperate maneuvers will likely persist as options contract. Yet each provocation attempt furnishes the US and NATO with invaluable intelligence regarding operational procedures and technical capabilities. Every sonar ping, radio transmission, and tactical movement by the Russian escort was absorbed by American electronic warfare systems. Ultimately, Moscow's strength demonstration merely exposed vulnerabilities. The Marinara will eventually reach its destination or face reversal, but the shadow it casts has been illuminated by American naval superiority's bright light. The message to the world remains unambiguous. The international order will receive defense, and those attempting subversion through shadows and steel will discover themselves exactly where the Russian submarine found itself: exposed, outclassed, and compelled to withdraw. This constitutes modern sea power's reality, a reality persisting as long as the United States Navy maintains its watch, guarding the world's gateways. As vessels departed, the Oscar Austin turned its bow back toward patrol station, its crew already preparing for the next potential contact. For them, just another mission, another day maintaining peace through strength. But for the world, a reminder that oceans remain power's ultimate arena. The Aegis system's technological marvels, the P-8A's silent lethality, and the American sailors' iron nerves form barriers standing between order and chaos. The Russian tanker Marinara may continue sailing for now, but its voyage serves as permanent documentation of what transpires when declining powers challenge superpowers, a chronicle of misplaced confidence encountering absolute competence. For those who served, for those comprehending the weight of Commander's gold, this encounter represented a naval diplomacy masterclass. We invite you to remain engaged as we continue monitoring these global flashpoints, delivering technical data and tactical truth unavailable elsewhere. The Shadow Fleet era may be ascending, but the sun never sets on United States Navy reach. We thank you for your service, support, and interest in defending our great nation and its allies. Remain vigilant, remain informed, and always remember that when stakes rise as high as North Atlantic swells, excellence remains the only acceptable standard. Would you like me to examine the USS Donald Cook's specific electronic warfare capabilities deployed during the standoff?